In 42 years on this bench, I thought I had seen every kind of criminal walk through that door. Drug dealers, thieves, white-collar criminals, but nothing prepared me for what happened on that cold Wednesday morning in February. Before I go any further, if you appreciate stories about real justice being served, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you will want to hear how this one ends. This is a story about what happens when someone thinks their badge puts them above the law. I am Judge Frank Caprio, and I have been serving the people of Providence, Rhode Island since 1985. My father came to this country from Italy with nothing but a strong back and a belief that America was a place where the law protected everyone equally, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. He taught me that respect for the law is what separates civilization from chaos. He used to say, "Frank, when a man with power forgets his duty, he becomes more dangerous than any criminal." That morning, I got to court at 8:15, same as always. My clerk, Christina, was already there with my coffee, strong black Italian style. She knows I cannot function without it. The courthouse was quieter than usual. There was a strange tension in the air that I could not quite explain. Even the security guards at the entrance seemed more alert than normal. One of them, Officer Martinez, gave me a look as I passed. It was a look that said, "Be careful today, Judge." I sat down at my desk and started reviewing the docket for the day. That is when I saw it. Detective Michael Brennan. The name jumped off the page at me. I knew this man. Everyone in Providence law enforcement knew Detective Brennan. 20 years on the force, decorated officer, commendations for bravery. But there had been whispers, rumors about evidence that went missing, suspects who walked free when cases fell apart, defense lawyers who seemed to know things they should not know. Christina looked over my shoulder. Her face went pale. She said, "Judge, this is unusual, very unusual." Her hand was shaking slightly as she set down my coffee cup. In all the years she had worked with me, I had never seen her this nervous about a case. She whispered, "My cousin works in the district attorney's office. She told me they have been trying to build a case against him for years, but witnesses keep backing out. Evidence keeps disappearing." She was right. Police officers rarely end up in my courtroom unless something serious has happened. And when they do, they usually show proper respect for the process. They understand how the system works because they are part of it. The charge was obstruction of justice. Brennan had been ordered to produce evidence in a drug trafficking case, and he claimed the evidence had been lost. But the federal prosecutors were not buying it. They suspected he had destroyed it deliberately to protect someone who was paying him to look the other way. I looked around my courtroom as it filled up that morning. There were more people than usual, lawyers in expensive suits sitting in the back. A woman I did not recognize taking notes. Later I would learn she was an FBI agent, and Detective Brennan himself, standing in the hallway, talking on his phone like he did not have a care in the world. He was laughing at something, completely relaxed, like this was just another day. Before Detective Brennan's case was called, I had a young woman standing before me. Maria Gonzalez, age 23, single mother of a 6-year-old daughter. She was shaking, clearly terrified. Her public defender stood beside her, a young lawyer who looked barely out of law school but who had fought hard for this moment. Her case was simple. She had been arrested 6 months ago for possession of drugs, cocaine, found in her car during a traffic stop. She maintained her innocence from the beginning, said she had never used drugs in her life, had no idea how they got in her vehicle. But here is what made her case different. The arresting officer was Detective Michael Brennan, and 3 weeks ago, her public defender had filed a motion to dismiss. New evidence had emerged. Security camera footage from a gas station showing Brennan approaching her car while she was inside paying. The timestamp matched exactly when he claimed to have found the drugs. I looked at Maria. She had tears running down her face. She said, "Your Honor, I work 2 jobs to support my daughter. I clean offices at night and work at a grocery store during the day. I have never broken the law. When that detective arrested me, he told me I would never prove my innocence. He said nobody would believe a cleaning lady over a decorated police officer." Her voice was shaking, but there was dignity in the way she stood. She reminded me of my father, working multiple jobs, doing everything right, and still getting stepped on by people who thought they were better. She told me her daughter had stopped sleeping through the night, afraid that mommy would be taken away. She told me she had lost her apartment because she could not afford the rent while paying legal fees. She told me her own mother had stopped speaking to her, convinced her daughter must be guilty. She told me she had been fired from her grocery store job when her manager found out about the arrest. Her public defender added, "Your Honor, Miss Gonzalez has never even had a parking ticket. She is a single mother who works 70 hours a week just to keep food on the table. This arrest destroyed her life, and the evidence clearly shows it was fabricated." I reviewed the evidence. The security footage was clear. There was no other explanation for what it showed. I said, "Miss Gonzalez, based on this new evidence, I am dismissing all charges against you. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into how this arrest was conducted." She broke down crying, not from sadness, but from relief. 6 months of her life had been destroyed by a lie. 6 months of legal fees she could not afford, of her daughter asking why mommy might go to jail, of neighbors whispering behind her back. Her public defender hugged her, tears in his eyes too. This was why he had become a lawyer. As she left the courtroom, she walked past Detective Brennan. He was sitting in the gallery now, waiting for his case to be called. And you know what he did? He smiled at her. Not a friendly smile, a threatening smile, like he was telling her this was not over. Maria saw it. She kept walking, but I saw her shoulders tense up. She was afraid of him, and I understood why. This man had already destroyed her life once. What would stop him from doing it again? That is when I knew we were dealing with something dangerous. This was not just a cop who made a mistake. This was someone who enjoyed the power, who got satisfaction from hurting people who could not fight back. I called Detective Brennan's case. He stood up slowly, taking his time. He was not in uniform. Instead, he wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Maria Gonzalez made in 2 months. Everything about his body language screamed disrespect. He walked to the front with his hands in his pockets. In 42 years, I have never had someone approach my bench with their hands in their pockets. It is basic courtroom etiquette. You show respect for the court, for the process, for the law itself. I said, "Detective Brennan, you are here because you failed to produce evidence that was subpoenaed by federal prosecutors. Evidence that is critical to an ongoing drug trafficking investigation. What is your explanation?" He shrugged, actually shrugged, like this was all a big inconvenience to him. He said, "Judge, evidence gets lost sometimes. We process hundreds of cases. Things fall through the cracks. It happens." Things fall through the cracks. That was his explanation for evidence in a major federal case disappearing while in his custody. I said, "Detective, you signed a chain of custody form. You personally verified that this evidence was secured. Are you telling this court that you simply lost track of kilograms of cocaine and thousands of dollars in cash?" He smiled. That same threatening smile he had given Maria. He said, "Judge, with all due respect, I think you are making a big deal out of a minor procedural issue. I have been doing this job for 20 years. I have put hundreds of criminals behind bars. Maybe we should focus on the real problems in this city instead of harassing the people trying to keep it safe." The arrogance was breathtaking. He was standing in my courtroom, accused of obstruction of justice, and he had the nerve to suggest that I was the problem. I could see people in the gallery shifting in their seats. Other lawyers were watching intently. They could sense something was wrong with this whole situation. The tension in the room was building like a storm about to break. I leaned forward. I said, "Detective Brennan, let me be very clear. This court takes evidence tampering seriously, very seriously. Now, I am going to ask you one more time, where is the evidence?" His expression changed. The smile disappeared. His jaw clenched. He took a step closer to my bench. Too close. Way too close. My bailiff tensed up, ready to intervene if necessary. I could see his hand moving toward his side, prepared for anything. Brennan said, "You know what, Judge? I think you have been on this bench too long. You have forgotten how the real world works. Out there on the streets, things are complicated. Sometimes you have to make deals. Sometimes you have to look the other way. That is how you actually fight crime. That is how you keep this city from falling apart." I could not believe what I was hearing. He was openly admitting to corruption. In my courtroom, on the record. The court reporter's fingers were flying across her keyboard, documenting every single word. She looked up at me with wide eyes, as shocked as I was. I said, "Detective, you took an oath to uphold the law, not to break it when it is convenient, not to make deals with criminals, to uphold it." That is when he completely lost his composure. His face turned red. I could see the veins in his neck bulging. He pointed his finger at me and raised his voice. He said, "You do not get to lecture me about the law. I have been protecting this city while you sit in your comfortable courtroom making decisions that let criminals back on the street. You have no idea what I deal with every day." The courtroom went silent. Everyone was staring. His lawyer tried to grab his arm, tried to pull him back, but Brennan shook him off with such force that the lawyer actually stumbled backward. The lawyer looked terrified. He knew his client was destroying himself, but there was nothing he could do to stop it. I said calmly, keeping my voice steady, "Detective Brennan, you need to control yourself. This behavior is completely inappropriate." He laughed. A bitter, angry laugh that echoed through the silent courtroom. He said, "Inappropriate? You want to see inappropriate? Let me tell you something, Judge Caprio. I know things. I know where you live. I know what time you leave for work every morning. I know where your family members work, where they shop, where they eat dinner. I know what school your grandchildren go to. I know the route your wife takes to church every Sunday morning." The threat was unmistakable, crystal clear. He was threatening me and my family in open court. I heard gasps from the gallery. Someone whispered, "Did he just say that?" Another person said, "He threatened the judge's grandchildren." A woman in the front row covered her mouth in shock. The shock in the room was palpable. My bailiff stepped forward immediately. The woman in the back who had been taking notes stood up, her hand moving toward her jacket, but I held up my hand. I wanted to hear what else this man would say. I wanted it all on the record. Every word, every threat. I said very slowly, very deliberately, "Detective Brennan, did you just threaten this court and my family?" He realized what he had done. I saw it in his eyes. For just a second, there was a flicker of panic. But instead of backing down, instead of apologizing, he doubled down. He said, "I am not threatening anyone. I am just stating facts. Information I have access to as part of my job. But you should think very carefully about how far you want to push this, Judge. You should think about the consequences. You should think about what might happen if you keep making enemies. People like you, people who think they are so righteous, they sometimes have accidents. Things happen." I took off my glasses. I only do that when things are about to get very serious. I cleaned them slowly with the cloth from my desk. The whole courtroom was watching, waiting. I thought about my father, who taught me never to back down from a bully. I thought about Maria Gonzalez and all the other innocent people this man had hurt. I thought about what justice really means. And then I stood up from my bench. In all my years as a judge, I can count on one hand the number of times I have stood up during proceedings. When I do, everyone knows something serious is about to happen. I said, "Detective Michael Brennan, you have just threatened a sitting judge and his family in open court. You have admitted to obstruction of justice. You have admitted to making deals with criminals. You have shown complete contempt for the legal system you swore to protect. Bailiff, take this man into custody immediately." But before my bailiff could move, the woman from the back of the courtroom was already walking forward. She pulled out her FBI credentials and held them up for everyone to see. She said, "Special Agent Rebecca Martinez, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Detective Brennan, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, accepting bribes, threatening a federal official, and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances." Brennan's face went white. All that arrogance, all that swagger, it drained away in seconds. He looked around the courtroom like he was searching for an escape route, but there was none. The exits were blocked. FBI agents were everywhere. 2 more FBI agents appeared from the back rows. They had been there the whole time, recording everything, documenting every word. One of them was holding a camera. Everything Brennan had said, every threat he had made, it was all captured on video. Agent Martinez continued, "We have been investigating you for 8 months, Detective. We have recordings of you accepting bribes from drug dealers. We have proof that you planted evidence on at least 12 innocent people, including Miss Gonzalez. We have bank records showing deposits that do not match your salary. Over $200,000 in unexplained income. We have wiretaps of you coordinating with organized crime figures. And now, thanks to your performance today, we have you on video threatening a judge and his family." Brennan tried to speak, but his voice came out as a whisper. He said, "This is a setup. You set me up." Agent Martinez shook her head. She said, "No, Detective. We gave you every opportunity to do the right thing. You could have told the truth. You could have produced the evidence. You could have shown respect for the law. Instead, you chose to threaten a judge. You set yourself up." As they handcuffed him, Agent Martinez added, "And by the way, we are raiding your office right now. As we speak, every file, every piece of evidence you have ever touched, every case you have ever worked, we are going through all of it. Every victim you framed, every criminal you protected, every dollar you took, it all comes out today. Your house is being searched. Your bank accounts are being frozen. Your assets are being seized. It is over." Brennan's knees actually buckled. The agents had to hold him up as they led him away. The man who had walked into my courtroom with such arrogance was leaving in handcuffs, completely broken. His expensive suit was rumpled now. His face was covered in sweat. All that confidence had evaporated. As he passed my bench, he looked up at me. He tried to say something, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? Sorry for threatening your family. Sorry for destroying innocent lives. Sorry for betraying everything a police officer should stand for. I just looked at him. No anger, no satisfaction. Just sadness that someone given so much power had used it to hurt people instead of help them. After they took Brennan away, I called a recess. I needed a moment. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of what had just happened. I went back to my chambers, and Christina brought me another cup of coffee. She sat with me for a few minutes, neither of us saying anything. Sometimes silence is all you need. Agent Martinez came to my chambers. She explained that the FBI had been building a case against Brennan for months. They knew he was corrupt, but they needed him to expose himself publicly. They needed him to show his true nature in a place where it could be documented beyond any doubt. She told me they had been watching him plant evidence, take bribes, and destroy cases for almost a year. But they wanted more than just a few charges. They wanted to catch him in a way that would expose the full extent of his corruption. They wanted to make sure that every single person he had hurt would get justice. 2 days later, Maria Gonzalez came back to my chambers. She brought her 6-year-old daughter with her. The little girl was holding a drawing she had made. It showed a judge behind a bench with a big smile. Maria wanted to thank me. She was crying again, but these were tears of joy. She said that after Brennan's arrest, 11 other people had come forward. All of them had been framed by him. All of them had their lives destroyed by planted evidence. Now they were all being exonerated. Their records would be cleared. Their reputations would be restored. They could finally move on with their lives. 1 week later, I received a letter from a man named David Chen. He had spent 3 years in prison because of evidence Brennan had planted, 3 years away from his wife and children. 3 years of his life stolen by a corrupt cop. He wrote that he was finally free, finally vindicated, and finally able to look his kids in the eye again. He wrote that his children had been bullied at school, called the children of a criminal. Now they could hold their heads high. I also received a letter from an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson. She was the same woman who had been sitting in my courtroom that day, watching everything unfold. She wrote, "Judge Caprio, I have been coming to your courtroom for 15 years. I have never seen anything like what happened that day. You stood up to a bully who thought he was untouchable. You showed my grandchildren that courage matters. Thank you." 3 weeks later, Detective Brennan pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The judge, at his sentencing, said that he had betrayed the trust of everyone who believed in justice, that he had used his badge as a weapon instead of a symbol of protection, that he had destroyed lives for personal gain, that he had made a mockery of everything law enforcement stands for. 6 months later, the Providence Police Department had completely reformed its evidence handling procedures. Body cameras became mandatory for all arrests. Every piece of evidence had to be logged by 2 officers. An independent oversight board was created to investigate complaints. Random audits were conducted monthly. Good officers, honest officers, finally felt free to do their jobs without corrupt leadership looking over their shoulders. I got a letter from the new police commissioner. She wrote that morale in the department had never been higher. Officers were proud to wear their badges again. They felt like they could do their jobs with integrity without worrying about corrupt superiors undermining their work. Applications to join the force had increased by 40%. Good people wanted to be police officers again. You know what my father used to tell me? He said, "Frank, the most dangerous person is not the criminal who breaks the law. It is the person who wears a badge while breaking the law, because they make everyone lose faith in justice itself." He was right. Detective Brennan did not just break laws. He broke trust. He broke faith. He broke the promise that every police officer makes to serve and protect. But here's what I learned that day. The system can work. When good people stand up to corruption, when institutions do their jobs, when nobody gets a free pass because of their title or their badge, justice prevails. Detective Brennan thought he could intimidate me. He thought knowing where I lived would make me back down. He thought his threats would protect him. He was wrong. In my courtroom, everyone is equal. The cleaning lady and the detective, the immigrant and the decorated officer, the powerless and the powerful. Everyone answers to the same law. So if you learn something from this story, if you believe that justice should be equal for everyone, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this, they remind us why the law matters. They remind us that no badge, no title, no amount of power puts anyone above accountability. I am Judge Frank Caprio. Remember, the best judgment is not always in the book. Sometimes it is in your heart. But when someone threatens your family, when someone betrays their oath, when someone uses their badge to hurt instead of help, the book is very clear. Nobody is above the law. Nobody. God bless you all, and thank you for believing in justice.